and we are recording a conversation between Geoff and Arianna. Hello, Arianna. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being a part of this with me.
This is what we'll call episode 001 of explorations between two minds, two people who just got to know each other and sense a lot of commonality in terms of visions and questions and faith and patience. So there'll be a wide-ranging exploration of a few different topics, and we're going to not try to control or choose, but just really be open to what comes up. We'll go for a bit less than 1 hour today, and then we'll move on with our days and nights and see what comes next.
Beautiful.
So we can even just start where we left off. Courageousness versus what was the word? Not deception.
Discernment.
Discernment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like having the bravery to keep going while also having the bravery to say no and to wait for the next better thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you have any concrete or non-concrete examples of how that does or does not show up in your life or the lives of anybody you've ever known or studied.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you say verses, because I don't see it as a versus. Courage is like that heart-centeredness, right? That I'm living from here, not from here, not from here, I'm living from here. And then to me, discernment are the faculties that protect, so that this random tentacle or this societal rule doesn't sway me off course. So I've had courage for years. I've been on the courage journey. But I have lacked discernment. Discernment is 2020, Arianna, will be you. And it's really interesting because bravery and courage are nuanced, and with what we view as comfort zones or what we view as different realms of what's acceptable, we can think something's courageous when it can actually be foolish or incongruent with our path. And we can be like, oh, I'm being courageous because I'm getting out of my comfort zone. Well, make sure with discernment that where you're getting out of your comfort zone is down a more enticing or exciting or inspiring road rather than off the side of a cliff.
Well, off a cliff, I feel like even that idea, that notion is based on what you think is at the bottom and how much it will hurt or not.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of, I think the poet might have been Rainer Maria Rilke, who's a poet I quote quite a lot. Says you have to trust your heaviness, much like a bird has to trust its heaviness before it flies. You have to go off the cliff where you don't know what's going to happen. You just have to not only trust that you'll get what you need, but also understand that just the linear mathematical way that growth works, it's 0.1% improvement on the next thing. And it's like the only way you're going to learn is to keep falling down. It's how we learned to walk. It's how we learned to not cry so much. It's how we learned object permanence. It's how we learned how to say our own names. It's you do it wrong more times than you do it right.
Interesting. I've heard it said that wisdom is learning through other people's experience, right? So
100%.
Wisdom is like, oh, interesting. I'm watching that maiden walk down this shortcut with the wolf through the forest, but he's not actually taking her to a shortcut. He's taking her to his lair, right? I don't want to be that person. I'm gonna take the path, and when there's a wolf who pops up and says, hey, I know a shortcut, I know from that wisdom, from observing their experience, that's not for me. So a lot of my work, I consider myself carrying the frequency of the rose, which to me is, yes, a rose has thorns, but there is rose of thorns.
Yes, a rose is romantic.
Yes, a rose is
Is
romantic.
is how I would have started, but you want me, and I'm not you.
That there is a petal by petal unfolding, and there is a constant frequency of the rose, right? So the bud to the blossom. And why I share that is because I now know the path can be beautiful. The path can be easy. The path can be felt. And the reason I know that is because my path was highly intellectual, very fiery, very much slam, slam, slam. And so I carry and I offer and I live and I share and I work with people who want the frequency of that rose. It can be easy. It doesn't have to be hard. How can we let our softness lead us? How can we let be beautiful? How can we learn from wisdom rather than just that pounding, face on the concrete?
Yeah. Wow. Softness reminds me of something someone told me about Scorpio, which is my sign, and I'm 3 days away from my birthday.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. And he said the hard thing with Scorpio is what to do with all that softness. But you also reminded me about how wisdom works and learning from other people. And I might venture that wisdom is the same shape no matter who is the one doing it. And so you can learn from other people's paths by saying, how did curiosity and courage and failure and stumbling blocks and programming and the urge to be free and to reinvent, how did they do with that based on information they had at the time? So you can absolutely learn from Maiden's outcomes after saying yes to the wolf for the shortcut. But I wonder if it doesn't
mean you won't get caught by a wolf.
Sure. Oh yeah.
I mean,
everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
What a quote.
Yeah, it's a quote Mike Tyson, the boxer. Yeah, I mean, you sort of have to know the taste of failure. You sort of have to know the taste of like blood in your mouth. To like, I think really grasp and get it in your bones, in your blood, and to really become the lesson, to become wisdom. I mean, I have to think that to become wise, it's like you sort of have to know what it. I mean, I think it comes back to connecting with the body and to the senses, and just knowing that in a big way you are nothing, and that you are a body, and you are feeling all this, and you've heard all this stuff and your brain has made sense of it. And it's like, once you get to that center, it's like, that's the endlessly providing center where from which you will pour out all of your gems, all your diamonds and pearls and rubies and sapphires, but not all at once. And it's hard when we live with social media, computers, phones, especially in economic precarious moments of time for people, and perceived stress and real stress, and not knowing where to go with to like sort out your own truth and tie it up with others, pandemic or not, face to face being easy or difficult. It's coming back to the breath, coming back to the body, coming back to being an organism on Earth, which is a rock flying through space in orbit around a star that is going to burn out like all the others. And just like rename all your gratitude and your patience and your faith and your questions. And then see who else can show up in those, and what voices you want to echo and include and to latch on and to intertwine with your questions. Given we're a social animal that is wired for small tribes, is certainly wired for growth, certainly wired for climbing up some ladder of mastery. You know, if we look at all the older humans who've gone before, who succeeded, or at least survived, they got good at something that made other people feel things, whether making them feel nourished by being a farmer and growing food and organizing harvesting of food, or painters and musicians who wrote enduring symphonies or massive works of oil on canvas that continue to make us feel ecstasy, doom, terror, excitement, like a Mark Rothko painting or a Beethoven symphony. Yeah. Yeah,
What's
so much.
there for you?
Go ahead, please.
No, I just said what's there for you.
I guess a reminder of anthropology, and at any chance I can, you know, these last few weeks and months at least, I've been thinking about treating the moment as if it was 2,000 years ago, and
Really?
kind of get back in the programming, get like deeper in the programming of what a person is.
Why 2000? Why not like 3500? Because if you reach 2000, you put yourself at the dawn of Western society and civilization, which has the mind as the hegemon. And then you're building a whole linear, Socratic, hierarchical, patriarchal worldview. Versus if you rewind another 1500 years, you're going into cyclical. You're going into deep earth presence. You're going into goddess culture. You're going into channeling. You're going into plant medicine. You're going into tribe, not just for survival, but because that's how human beings organize. You're going into connection with star nations, right? You're going into multidimensional living. Why stop at 2000? Keep going back.
Okay. I'll give you the reins here. We'll do a little bit of goddess culture here on this Zoom meeting. So take us back 3,500 years ago. And you can kind of, you know, talk to me about who you and I are, and what our purpose and function is in the greater tribe. I'll just to start and kind of, I'll try to wring out my Socratic patriarchal programming from damned 2,000 years ago. You know, poet, mystic, shaman, robes, music, resonance, astronomer, myth maker, storyteller, entertainer, court jester. I'll kick us off with that, but please, goddess, take it away.
So interesting how those weave in your narrative, because I would say that the rule of the performer, of the court jester, that path, that you know, may I weave and spin you a tale, that kind of captivation, enchantment even, may have some shamanic storytelling roots, but the aspect of bard is really different than the Merlin, right? The sage, like, to me, there's a kind of I don't know when it started, because I've distanced myself from the historical need to label and understand. But at some point we started to see the mystical and the mythical as entertainment. So in some communities, and in terms of my role, there's an aspect of like, it's necessary to come to the priestess or the oracle or the medicine woman before making choices of harvest or expansion of land or prayer. Like there's a kind of ultimate authority that is a spiritual authority that weaves into more governmental authority. And so understanding that the way of being is not from mankind. It is by deep listening to the earth on which we walk and her codes through jungle, through water, through wind, through storm, through animals, inform human beings how to tread lightly and honor the cyclical beingness that we all are. And a little more at times when human beings would so humble themselves to not be in a need to self-identify, but in a hunger for devotion, the divinity that they could embody would seem divine, would seem otherworldly, when really there's a human capacity that lies nascent within our DNA that any one of us can choose. I want to limitlessly explore what it means to embody my divinity on a moment by moment basis. I want to experience this sense of not being the intellect, but having the intellect be a servant to this higher consciousness, to this heart space, to this planet. Mm-hmm. And then vulnerably living in that understanding that we're part of a tapestry that's going to be woven with or without us.
That's going to be woven with,
or without us. That's a good line. We're part of a tapestry that's going to be woven with or without us. Really takes the arrogance out of it.
Yeah. Though my mind goes, I could see that as a brain pickings headline. So again, maybe I just need more deprogramming of like trying to reach for not permanence. See,
greatness.
What?
Greatness.
Greatness with a capital G.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
David Foster Wallace.
Well, I thought of him a couple days ago when I was with a friend, and we were kind of talking about a lot of this, or at least a little seed of sort of what this conversation today has become. Yeah, well,
a tragedy, but also like amazing how brilliance isn't enough.
Yeah. I mean, I've never, makes me think about fiction versus nonfiction. And
what is fiction?
Huh?
I said, what is fiction? It's like, is it fiction? But
right.
Storytelling.
Well, yeah, and I've sort of come around to see that it's less about, when it comes to that distinction, it's maybe less about did it really happen, more than it's about what expectations do you have about the relationship between speaker and listener. You know, what can they expect, right? And I mean, you help me understand the power of boundaries and how much more can happen when you know the boundaries, and then you can really push hard to the edge and like wrestle within those boundaries and extend our own capabilities and learn that we can go farther than we thought we could, individually and collectively.
So that's the boundaries thing is interesting, because I made a tweet a little bit ago and I said, to be a queen is to remember that Lancelot will always betray Arthur for Guinevere.
I read that and had thoughts.
That's like quite a tweet, you know? It is. It's like,
it is.
For people who don't know Arthurian legend, they're going to be lost. But for people who do, there's going to be I want just like a pause it and just listen, you know? But what's so interesting about that is like, that brought about the end of the round table, right? That brought about the reign, the quest for the Holy Grail. Like this legacy was shattered because boundaries were shifted in a way that didn't toe the line, right? They were crossed, and then like devastation. And so it's interesting to think what part of us comes online to want to do certain things, right? What part of us, I'm serious.
No,
Totally serious. Like
I know. Oh, that's why I'm laughing, because it's so real.
Like, so when we're talking about, so let's say systems of oppression, right? Racism, sexism, any sort of kind of system of oppression. I guess if you want to say capitalism, but consumerism certainly. Pushing the boundaries of those things actually creates change for radical transformation and ultimately the betterment of all, right? So sometimes being a rebel, a troublemaker, that kind of like holy jester, like destructive magician energy, it's really powerful. So many eyebrow expressions. I love it.
Destructive magician energy.
Yeah,
That's going to be a Twitter bio name for me sometime soon.
Wow. But like the motive known, right? The motive known. And like, I understand in terms of pushing integrity to see how strong it is. But then I really think that having a knowledge of why we are, let me finish my sentence and then say one more thing, because this relates. The knowledge of why we're doing what we're doing is so crucial. So why I got out of academia, I could have gone the Yale Harvard route. Like, I was Phi Beta Kappa. I had letters of rec available to me from like probably 5 professors. I had this GPA, and I went, ugh, because in academia, we have all of this conversation about gender and identity and sex, and like, that was my thesis and that was my juice. And then I would go to the East Coast, and my literal family would say, I don't know what you mean. Sex and gender are the same thing. And I'm like, no, you have to read Judith Butler and Gender is Performance. And I realized there was this eggheadiness about academia, in that ideas stayed in this capsule that never made it to the lay public. And so I think with those of us who have intelligence, it's important for us to either have friends or a partner or a community of people or a person who just loves to play in the mind, right? It's like they're like dogs running around. Maybe sometimes they hump each other, right? Like there's a race, there's fetch, like there's the mind gets its juice out. My ex was like this. I was like, your mind dog just needs to play. And that enables us. I was so serious. And that intellectual expression and satisfaction and like stamina and all that allows us to then use our minds as servants, so that we can have these brilliant brains, not just be mindlessly pontificating every idea that comes into our sphere, or eggheading our way where people aren't even going to understand us because we're using so many complex terminologies in a specific domain, right? Like, mastery is me using the language of whatever it is in such a way that someone with a 3rd grade education can understand, right? And me having such a synthesis of my area of passion, expertise, that I can relate to listeners directly without it being about me, but actually the message. I'm not so much the singer as I am the song.
Yeah, I mean, from the root to the fruit. It's like Picasso at 90 could teach you how to be a 4-year-old finger painter, and he can zoom right back to that level of his own growth. Because I think mastery, I think, is, half of mastery at least is like understanding where you come from and understanding your own, being able to trace a clear line back from the beginning of your life to the end of it.
Mastery in part is understanding where you come from. Okay, interesting. Well, that's why the tapestry of me has come into nascent possibility.
the tapestry of me, which is an idea you had for you and me to flesh out and maybe make into a thing or an invitation or a program for others to come and learn what their me is and how, yeah, it's like there's a tension between where you started and where you are, and that line is your messy life story, and it's got a magnetism to it. And it pulls in all the things that you learned, right? Math, science, arts, dance, debate,
Personal experiences.
Yeah. And it's like they were significant, and we, like, as they came into being ours, our experience to classify and arrange in our own system of memory, we slotted it in with a certain energy and a certain residue on it. Maybe it got gooey and sticky, and the real path to integrity, sacral integrity, a great term you brought up to me the other day, which I hadn't thought of before. It's about going back in and unbuilding block by block, taking it out and looking at it again. And you have to have the patience. It's like, well, if you want to keep going and take one more step in your life, in your day, move to the next calendar block, right? There's no way to just like numb out and wait for it. The great and terrible thing about life is you can't fast forward, but also in a sense, no moment can be saved for later. A lot of people.
Yeah, that brings up. Thank you. There are a few things that I'd love to like run with there. So the first is in the importance of understanding ourselves, right? Like, I don't fully understand why it's important, but I know that I couldn't be where I am today if I didn't have a sense of self-awareness. And some of us are really good at that, right? Like present company included. We're like PhD on the Geoff thing, right? Like so much.
I'm an expert on me. It's true.
Right. And so in doing so, where can that be a lighthouse for others to become expert on themselves? That's one piece. But then the second is this thing about the block removal, right? So Joe Dispenza, who is an excellent resource in so many ways, if you're not familiar, listeners, Joe Dispenza talks about how your known past will necessarily create a predictable future. And the way to prevent that is through the generous present moment, where all possibilities become available by stilling the momentum of the past to then, through conscious creation, pull from the quantum field something of choice. Choice by the heart, choice by the higher self, choice beyond the momentum of the past. And so to me, knowing where we've been is essential for going forward. Because if we're not, we're essentially bringing along our closet of skeletons or our mountains of like our big old bags of boulders, right? We're like, I don't have anything. Drag, right? Like or as what's his name? Don Miguel Ruiz says in The Mastery of Love, we're bodies walking around with these wounds. And it's painful to touch anyone because we're bumping up against our wounds. And so there's like a necessity, and like, sure, you can be artistic about it and be like, love is pain. To me, don't have that conversation. You can have that conversation with someone else. I'm really about having the courage. I know.
No, I laugh because it's true. Just like if I ever yawn, it's because I'm very engaged and my brain needs more oxygen. It's not because I'm bored with the subject. If I ever yawn, I swear it's because I'm so dialed in. I need more. Sorry.
For sure. There's a courage in saying, you know, my father passed away unexpectedly last summer, and everybody's been really like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. How are you? Da da da. And I've gone through my own journey with that, but there's an essay by Judith Butler. I think it's a chapter from a book called Violence, Mourning, and Politics, that if I haven't mentioned, worth mentioning again, that really informed me about grief to prepare me for this situation. So she said that when 9/11 happened, America went on the defense. We went, we're going to get them. We're going to get those effers, right? We're going to get those asterisk. I'm not going to swear on your podcast. We're going to get those fuckers.
Yeah.
And
adults only, baby. Woo!
There was this like shell and aggression that went up, because like, how dare you mess with America? And Judith Butler said, what would happen if we actually realized as a nation that we were vulnerable, that we were hit in our vulnerability, and that because of that, we weren't the America we thought we were before. She said that by nature, grief transforms us. When something happens, when there's a shock, right? When there's a shock to the system, and that's part of the tapestry of me, right? It's like, where did you get those lightning bolts that you are now making as an excuse for who you are today? Because when that happens, the thing that the ego, the linear, the Western mind wants to do is say, you're going to be okay, double down, right? You're going to make it through. Instead of saying, no, my dad died. My dad fell 20 to 25 feet when an awning collapsed, and nobody could have predicted that. And I was there in the hospital watching him take his last breaths and weaving medicine songs with my mother and sister, because we flew in to make sure he was there, right? Like it was an amazing transformational process. I'm not the same woman as I was a month ago. I'm not the same woman as I was yesterday, because this is a shattering experience. And let me tell you, when the oxygen got taken off and the coroner announced the time of death, I went out and I pounded the side of like a wall that was there. And the knife I felt in my chest was the exact same knife as losing my first love at 17. The exact same. And I knew all heartbreak feels the same.
Oof.
That is to say, right? Can we let life crack us open? Can we stop trying to just go back to our same consumerist bullshit with coronavirus, but with masks? Can we say, we need a pause. We need a pause in our relationship with ourselves, with others, with the earth. We're not the same. Can we sit in the tension, in the messiness? I'm not a guru. I'm not a teacher. I'm a human being discovering what it means to live at the edge of my vulnerability. And in doing so, giving people the courage to live their own, right? And in being that messy and that open, we trust that the same spirit that makes birds sing and the planets turn and the gravities between Jupiter and the sun and Mars and the moon and us move through us in such a way that we become a greater unfoldment of ourselves. I really deeply believe that's the only way forward.
Wow. Well done. Wow. Nice. Wow.
We can just take a breath into that. Let's just breathe for a few breaths into. When new frequencies get activated, when new energies and ideas enter the field, it's important to slow down and let them touch where they want to within us. Right, because we're not walking brains. No. We're not that terrible picture of SpongeBob that's literally eyeballs in a brain and the little square pants, right?
At least not in this hour. Because you know that after this call, I turn on the fire flames behind me and I have white male. We're going to say, we're going to analyze love. We're going to analyze death. We're going to analyze this. We're going to analyze that call. Let's go, go, go. That's what I'm doing later, personally. And I'll send you a postcard from my next hour, and the hour after that, I'll say hi. Hi.
Yeah, and I'm going to be dropping some women into some very deeply present space. So isn't it funny how we dance here and then go back to our extreme worlds?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, being a magician, right? I mean, sorcerer is another word that's been coming, mage. and the magus is another term that's been coming. The more, so I'll be 34 in a few moments in life here, and
10 years older than I joked you might be turning. I was like, oh, you're turning 24. I don't know if you caught that.
24.
That's what I said earlier. I was being cheeky when you said you were.
That was sweet. Yeah, forever 24. I don't look a day over 24. That's what you can say.
Forever 24.
Yeah, I mean, the older I get, the more I sort of understand Scorpio, or at least think about it, and like think about, well, what is my role? You know, warrior, magician, king, lover. To draw on that.
Because I know we can always get into that. I would invite you to just close your eyes and tune in and see what got activated or triggered or shaken or stirred from the what we just experienced and flowed through. Just observing.
Yeah. Well, certainly shames and pains and trauma that really never leave. I think I just learned how to carry them and use them as material.
Jeez, that sounds intense. Have you ever heard of somatic release? Of
what release?
Somatic release. This woman.
This is yeah. Well, it reminds me of a quote that love is the illusion that one woman differs from another. I dropped that for my male listeners. We can laugh about that in our next hour, surrounded by hellfire and scars, and we'll sharpen our swords against the fire and bang some stones against metal and cut some meat and put some animal blood on us and wear a hide.
Right.
But before we come to the dance, we'll of course get cleaned up and we'll shave. We'll put on our robes, and so we can ask you to dance. And we can do all those things.
That bothered you, that question?
Well, I mean, bothered me as you know, getting a hard ball thrown at you would bother you, in that you have to jump, like you have to like really like to anchor in and like check your balance, check your ankles, check your knees, and like get in the position to catch it and like know what's happening in the game. And like, I'm in center field, we got a runner at second, there's one out, so I need to see who I've got. For a baseball reference, I like to lean on that. I like to lean on, of course, like a man, I like to lean on old comfortable paradigms to cushion the fall when I am a falling object. Because say again?
Use a rose petal. They're very soft.
I might be the most beloved man who is has the biggest gap between love available and love received. I may be the most estranged internal solar system in the history of the world.
That's quite a claim. So back to somatic release.
But it leads, and I haven't forgotten your good question. It's like, even when you sent me back to close my eyes and kind of get back to what just hit me, it's like I'm reminded of the constant like colorful movie slideshow playing in my head of thoughts and memories and images. And
sorry, go ahead.
Every word that is ever said, or any little stimuli, it hits me along that chord, right? From past to present, somewhere along that sensitive chord to which every little ornament and every little filament has kind of been attracted and hung on. It's like, that's where my sensitivity, my awareness, my judgment, my decision-making comes from. Any moment I go into, I'm to be present, is to have good judgment. It's like, I know where my sensibility comes from. Like and so all those old memories, painful and joyous and everything in between, every falling on the on the concrete, knocking out a little bit of tooth, or overcoming and being celebrated. It's all in the next thing I say. I mean, the poet Ted Hughes said, whenever you sit down with your pen, every year of your life is right there.
So I'm getting something from this that I've been thinking about since moving to Hawaii, which is the question, and I think it's a good one for those of us who are
and maybe
artists.
Who is we, for those who don't know, or you cannot.
Yeah. When do we become us is the question. So let me just tease this a little bit, because like I so understand you, and that is the part of me that's dying, or is like maybe I would say 85% on its way out. So the writer, the artist, the I draw from my past for my pain is such an interesting like perception, right? Because here I am at present, and then here's my past that I draw from. But then like the present is an ever changing moment. So how long am I that present person drawing from my past? Because as I live, I'm also accumulating new experiences. Now, in my personal experience, what I noticed when I started to have that click come online, I'm now drawing from my past ego identity, right? Rather than maybe the, in my experience, then the playing the role of, you know, political science, wannabe sorority girl, whatever the heck that was. Sure. Then there was this like mercurial artist, lover, writer being who emerged. And then my past was drawn for my art and for my writing, but then also my present was linked to my past, and I was understanding it through that. So then, like you said, something like every woman is the same, right? This lover became that lover, and they all melded together in the same lesson. And essentially at some point, life led me to a place of like, have you had enough? Right? Like, are you done with that kind of ego of, here I am harvesting my past, but my present is becoming my past thing? And are you ready to say, here's the thing. I have a manuscript that is on its way to being a novel that took 2 years of crying, a ton of tears, and harvesting 24 of my own journals, thousands of pages to create, right? Like blood, sweat, and tears, real grit, my own drama, making fiction out of truth, the whole thing. So I totally 100% understand the need to take your life, get messy with it, and make art and writing out of it, 100%. And for me, at some point, life called me to start living in the present and drawing a different future into my being from my imagination rather than from my past. And so the somatic work, or the body work, is understanding that these moments in time, these traumas, these loves, these experiences live in my body. And for me to access them, feel them, grieve them, get pissed off about them, hit a pillow about them, primal scream while banging drums on a mountaintop about them, whatever it is, right? Like literally clears the way for my body to hold new frequencies so that I can be a different person than 2018 Arianna was.
One small thing to say to that is your mind might blow open a bit if you change seeing the present as a point as seeing it as a line.
Go on.
The present, I mean, the sad thing about a point is that it doesn't have any mass, and it's only one thing, and it's not anywhere else. Whereas a line takes up no space and has no beginning or end. It just is where it is. And if that's the present, you see that the present actually includes every little tiny thing that ever occurred in a present. Plus, I would say on this side, it's the spectral imaginings of what might happen next, and maybe even the like the drip, drip, drip of all of this magical imagery of the past that we remember over here coming through our whole system. And then it gives us a movie of what the future might be, which is, of course, where we spend all of our wonderful anxiety time that everybody spends every day. Happens in this, well, what if it's this, what if it's this, what if this, how does this point here relate to this point here, and like, what if it's not good enough, how do I like match it up? And it's like, you realize you are the matching up, and you are, and me are the same. The experience of present is the same. We are here now, grounded in the same body and heart that we grounded ourselves in. Thich Nhat Hanh said, we are here to awaken from the illusion of our separateness. And yeah, I mean, love doesn't cling because love doesn't fear that it won't be there. And this is an interesting thing about relationships and romance, is like 1 + 1 = 1, 1 + 1 = 2, and 1 + 1 = 3 or more, or infinity.
I don't understand that.
So
how is it 1 + 1 = 1 or 3?
Marriage, I've been told, is like 2 souls in 1 flesh.
Okay.
Friendship, I've been told, is like 1 soul in 2 bodies.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then there's also like a communal and familial form of love that's romantic in the sense of you really want to see good things. You know, and it's like, well, surely there's a matriarch and patriarch of a town or a clan or a tribe or a community where the sort of like not non-sexual tension that they have is the force that, might go cultivate the crops, and prepare the food and clean the space and nurse the children. It's like, yeah. And I mean, maybe this is me trying to like deprogram my westernization of like, how can I almost like not desexualize sex, but like,
we're going there in the last 10 minutes, huh?
Yeah.
How can I desexualize sex? Well, so I wonder if what you're saying is no, actually, what are you saying?
I mean, I think it's how to not cling, and it's maybe even how to not fear and not worry and not be anxious about something not being there, something not going your way, not being able to control something.
There's a quote, relax, nothing is under control.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's almost like that, your sense of the present being a point, and I'm suggesting it's actually a line.
I think you're correct. I definitely think you're correct. All I meant from the point was that as a writer, as an artist, it's like, here we are, and then we draw from the past, and there's like this threading that takes place. But I wouldn't say that.
It's only if you think there's a distance.
Oh, so you're saying, well, right, like the heart.
It's all right here. Right. I mean, if you really want the raw text output of what your last thing reminded me of, I can name the names of the living people, but I don't do that because, maybe I don't have a good reason. You're asking about the line between therapy and art. You're asking about the line between public and private.
Interesting for you to say the past is not something that is, like essentially the past is alive. It actually challenges my sense of like how I've been conceptualizing linearity, which I don't usually advocate. So I'm grateful that I'm gonna have to dwell on that a little bit, because I'm like, oh yeah, 2017. It's like 2017 is alive. Well, yeah. Oh no, it's not. I left that back in Portland.
You wish. You wish you could get away from the earth. But if you really want to feel beloved on the earth, you got to go back to the site of the wound.
Yeah. And maybe when, I guess with somatics, I'm just learning that like things can be cleared, you know, like those pain points, so to speak, don't have to be throbbing every time. I once heard a yoga teacher say, it's not that we're trying to fix anything, it's that every time you come to the mat, hopefully it's a little bit less painful. And like there's a journey, I used to talk about this a lot, of the wound, right? When the wound is left alone, it starts to fester and get gross and pussy, and so you need to expose it. Sunlight, water, salt water, medication, stitch it up, and then leave it the F alone. Leave it alone, because eventually it's going to be a scar. And a scar does not hurt in the same way that an open wound does. And I feel like there's just an offering, because I know I've done that as artists or writers. Sometimes we give ourselves permission to gouge ourselves. It's like, let me just pierce this wound that's already bleeding so I can get something out of it. It's like, Arianna, let the wound be. let it be. Does it need attention? No, it's all stitched up. Great. Just tranquila. Go do literally anything else. And time will pass. Your frequency will shift, and eventually you will find it is a star.
I have to say, though, that courage involves going where you wish you didn't have to go again.
I agree. I agree.
And you will be dragged kicking and screaming to your destiny, no matter how much you avoid it.
Courage involves, I'm writing that down. Courage involves going
where you wish you didn't have to go.
Where you wish. Right. And discernment is knowing whether you need to go there.
Yeah, need and want. I mean, I feel like that's a lesson we all learn by living and trying to make art and writing and become wise and give ourselves away, is the difference between want and need. And I feel like we're still apprentices of that, right? I mean, all babies and toddlers really do is I need, I want, I need, I want, I need. Just a ghastly wanting that never stops. It's an unfillable hole, right? No child can be loved enough, really.
Interesting. That's an interesting slant. Right, and that point of courage versus discernment, which is where we started, which is lovely to wrap all the way back around. Discernment is sensing whether you need to. Essentially, it's like, as you said, if you're being discerning from ignorance, life's going to take you there. If you're like, no, I don't need to process my ex, I'm good, I'm going to date happily and freely, right? Life's going to be like, oh yeah, because essentially, whether it's the trauma in your body or in your auric energetic field, something in you becomes a magnet because you want to heal, right? So you start to go, ding, ding, let me attract the thing that will trigger me. And then the more you avoid it, I'm so serious. So serious.
That's why I'm laughing.
Then you end up in front of a person that you're like, my God, you remind me of Adam, or whatever it is, you know? And so it's like, it's like when you have that moment, there's a sense of, ooh, I need to deal with this. And then there's an Oprah quote that I love. Oprah says, the voice of God is like a whisper. And then it's like a little nudge. And then it's a firmer elbow jab. Yeah. And then if you're not getting the message, it's like a frying pan to the head. I prefer to listen to the whispers. So yeah, I think courage is following the whisper of the heart.
Nice. I'm reminded of the artist Austin Kleon, who in one of his newspaper blackout collages says, God speaks, but he says the last thing you want to hear. And There's the proof of the truth. There it is. It took a little few oscillations, and then bam, from California to Hawaii. The bands from my heart to hers. You saw it here first. This stuff really works.
That's so good. God speaks, but it's the last thing you want to hear, right? Because there's an unshaking of the sense of self that we think we are.
Yeah, it's almost like we become an apprentice to I don't want. It's like, I don't want to. No, I don't want. You start listening for I don't want, you really start to see, yeah, I mean, every money issue, every love issue, every community issue, every interpersonal issue really comes down to I don't want. And it's, well, what do you not want to face because of what that thing would mean for the continuity or lack thereof of your story, right? It's almost like stuck up to a point, right? If the present is a point, the past is stuck and it can't go into the future. And so it's trapped in distances. And then you're like, oh no, 2017 can't be present because that, it's like that, like that string of the guitar, right? And that's why all of these ceremonies have, the flute, which plays on a lot of different bandwidths, as opposed to the lyre, one string, not as potent, or a piano or a harp. And then you start to think about like maps of constellations, right? There's all these different distances and tensions, and so if you play many at once, you start to get harmony. But if you're just stuck on dum 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 dum, it'll drive you crazy.
There's one piece I want to
2 minutes left. 2 minutes left.
To wrap up, yeah. And that is, you said we're all avoiding the thing we don't want, right? The poverty, or the I'm forever alone, or like whatever it is. And Frederick Dodson, who's a success coach and reality creation expert, has an exercise, you can look it up on YouTube, called the and then what exercise. And it's literally, you go to your worst fear. I'm gonna be working in a grocery store. Okay, and then what? And then I'm gonna get just absolutely obese and depressed. Okay, and then what? And then I'm gonna commit suicide. Okay, and then what? And then I'm gonna be floating around in the astral, not like, and then what? And like he has a hilarious example about interdimensional spiders, and I laughed so hard when he did it. But I really think what he's trying to do is break you through to your imagined fear. It's like, I love the idea that the life of your wildest dreams is on the other side of your imagined fear. We can sit here and talk about it all day, but like living it expands us and allows us to the unfoldment of ourselves.
Well, I think to wrap this up, you just showed me what is possible in 1 hour, and you've helped reset the bar for what kind of hours I would like to be on my plate, calendar, forward-looking, decision making of what I let in, what I say yes and no to. So thank you. I think this was amazing, and I'll be interested to see if one other person who isn't you or me picks this up and is like, yeah. I'll invite you to maybe say a brief closing, and then I will stop the recording, and then maybe we'll stay on the call and just
wrap up. Sure. I just invite us to really let the pieces and the points that impacted us today, to pause with those and to not let them be fleeting fancies for temporary moments, but really calls to the ripening, to the transformation that life is calling us to, whether for you or for me or for any listener. There's been so much activated here and covered that we can really ripen into. So just taking the time to be like, yeah, that was beautiful, and I'm not just going to rush ahead. I want to see what happens when I let that ripen.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you for listening. Stop recording.